Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nello Reads channel. Our first nuclear revenge story of the day comes from Karasu Teps 80. Try to strong-arm evict me illegally? We'll see about that. This happened back in 2010 when I lived in Winter Garden, Florida with my husband and his dying uncle. Background: my husband and I moved in with his sick uncle after losing so much during the 2008 housing market crash in the US, like many of my husband's lawn maintenance customers. We also moved in with his uncle into a condo because his uncle had stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver, and his self-entitled sister and her family refused to help take care of him. My husband, a retired Seminole County sheriff's officer, important later, and I got ourselves set up in the condo's 2 bedrooms. His uncle had himself set up in the living room, including his bed. On the first day, we found dangerous black mold caused by a leaky dishwasher. On the second day, we found the master shower had loose tiles and a leaky shower head. On the third day, we found a nest of brown recluse spiders in the living room. We talked with his uncle about these problems and found out that the slumlord, friends with self-entitled sister/aunt and her family, was refusing to take care of the issues as required by law. We wanted to start legal actions then, but my husband's uncle talked us out of it several times. The slumlord was nice to us so long as my husband's sick uncle was alive. The very next day after my husband's uncle died was a completely different story. Slumlord had turned nasty, aggressive, and began to try and strong-arm evict us like we were nothing more than drug addict squatters. Slumlord even bowed up and aggressively tried to fight my husband when he dropped off our next rent check. He kept telling us that we had to move or else, but yet refused to follow actual Florida laws to evict us. Slumlord and his corrupt Winter Garden PD code enforcement officer wife even recruited my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle to start harassing about, and I quote, just moving, even if we had to live in a tent. Why don't you and my nephew just move so they can rent the condo to another senior? We don't have anywhere to go yet, and he must go through eviction laws or get into very serious trouble. You're nothing but trouble, nephew. You've been problems since the day you were born. Get out of their condo and stop being a problem for everyone. Who cares if you have to live in a tent? All of this made my retired SCSD officer husband, who specialized in uncovering corrupt law enforcement, very suspicious. We talked and began investigating Slumlord and the corrupt code enforcement wife. My first order was to place all rent into escrow with evidence of repairs that have been neglected. Second, I sent a notification of cease and desist of harassment to the slumlord and self-entitled aunt. Next, I researched public property tax records. Woohoo! There's some dirt there. Slumlord's condo wasn't registered as a rental property with the state of Florida and was paying far less in property taxes than Slumlord should have been paying. Property tax records also showed that Slumlord did not own the condo. It was still deemed to his mother, which I found out had been living in a retirement home for 5 years before my husband's uncle moved in. My husband found out that corrupt code enforcement wife had been inspecting and signing off on hers and Slumlord's properties, including the condo, which is against Florida code enforcement conduct laws. I found out from neighbors in the condo that Slumlord had only been renting to seniors with severe health issues. My best discovery, though, next to tax evasion, was finding out that the Condo Owners Association had a very strict no renting/leasing policy, meaning you or family had to live in the condo and it couldn't be rented. The revenge. Now that we had all of our evidence, my husband and I began to knock down all of the slumlord's dominoes. My husband went and filed a complaint with the Winter Garden Police Department about corrupt code enforcement wife and her perjuring inspections on her family properties. My husband has a glowing record in Seminole County and with the FDLE for having over 200 clean arrests and taking down nearly 60 corrupt public officials, including Child Protective Services in the early 2000s. This background helped push Winter Garden PD to open an investigation into corrupt code enforcement wife. They discovered that not only had she perjured inspections on her family's properties, but also on my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle's property as well. This got corrupt code enforcement wife fired, stripped of her state enforcement officer's license, and convicted of multiple crimes. I sent all property tax fraud evidence to Florida's Property Tax Division. That got the state to investigate Slumlord. The state found that not only did he commit property tax fraud on the condo, but also on a property that he was renting to his son and self-entitled aunt's son, along with business tax fraud and income tax fraud. Both Slumlord's son and self-entitled aunt's son were also busted for possession of illegal narcotics with intent to sell when investigators came to the rental house they lived in. I never expected that much fraud to be found from all of this, but I'm glad it happened. The business tax fraud of Slumlord affected self-entitled aunt and self-entitled uncle as well, since they were his business partners. Self-entitled uncle then came under investigation by the USPS board as he was the postmaster of Winter Garden. Self-entitled uncle lost his comfy job and pension after it was discovered how he was assisting Slumlord in the tax fraud scam and for stealing money orders. All four were convicted of multiple white-collar crimes, had to sell their properties and most of their stuff, serve some form of time, and pay huge amounts of fines and restitution. Slumlord, his wife, hubby's self-entitled aunt, and hubby's self-entitled uncle, along with their sons, all went down for multiple crimes, both felonies and misdemeanors, all because they thought they could strong-arm evict us. It just proves how smart we tenants can really be when pushed. Also proves why everyone should know all rental laws and how to research public records, because it can save you in the end. It's kinda crazy how deep everything in this story goes. Like, just when I thought they found everything bad, they kept finding more fraud and crime. But wow, getting your own aunt and uncle arrested, that's gonna make Thanksgiving a little awkward, when they get out of jail at least. Our next story comes from Reasonable Theme 671. A man harassed me and I got his retirement benefits taken away. So this took place over 3 years ago, give or take some. I, 29 female, left the military and picked up a contracting job in the same field. While I was starting my new career, I was also leaving an unhappy and abusive marriage. My ex-husband, 29 male, was a store manager at a GameStop, and when people asked if he gave military discounts, he would give military discounts. But he would also ask if people knew me on base and what I was up to. A man we will call Bubble Bass, 35-ish male, actually worked for me, and the two of them bonded over their mutual hate for women. Bubble Bass would call me very inappropriate names at work, and even went so far as to attempt to get my home address to give to my ex. I reported the incidents through proper channels and had to get a new apartment, but unsurprisingly, the military did nothing to Bubble Bass. So I decided to keep my eyes on him and wait until he made another misstep. Over the next 3 years, working with him was horrible. He would undermine my authority in the section by telling junior people I was stupid, being intentionally insubordinate, and publicly talking about how he was exploiting the foster care system to make money off the children he was supposed to be taking care of. About a year ago, another girl, 20 female, came to me and told me that Bubble Bass was approaching her in a way that made her uncomfortable. When I pulled up the chat logs, Bubble Bass was begging her to have sex with him, even though he was married and she repeatedly told him she wasn't interested. I convinced the girl to report Bubble Bass despite her hesitation. During the investigation, while I was interviewed, I spared no detail about what exactly Bubble Bass was doing and saying, to include fraud, waste, and abuse of government assets and systems. I kept a literal crap list with dates and times. As things turned out, there were about 4 other women at our base that Bubble Bass was harassing. Bubble Bass went to non-judicial punishment this week and lost everything. He has 18 years in the military and was 2 years away from a full retirement. He lost his clearance, he lost his foster children, and he lost his honorable discharge. He is literally starting life over in his 30s with a discharge that shows he harasses women with no benefits and 18 years of training in a job field that is only relevant if he has a clearance. I guess this story goes to show, play stupid games and win stupid prizes. This guy overall sounds like an awful human being, so I'm glad he got what was coming, even if it took a while. Our next story comes from our ad 809. My school actually protected me even though I was harassed outside the school premises. This occurred over a decade ago. It happened at the end of my senior year of high school. I am from India, and girls are still afraid to tell others about being harassed because of shame and the society. I was enrolled in a big school. There was more than 800 students in my school, so you can imagine the rush and crowd when leaving school. It used to get so crowded and chaotic because there were parents' cars and auto rickshaws waiting to pick up the kids. Some kids are riding their bicycles through the crowd, while others run to the nearby vendors for pani puri and samosas. It's almost like an amusement park. One day, while walking hand in hand with my friend, I spotted this weird straggling man looking through the bunch of kids. I thought he might be looking for someone specific and didn't think much about it, but I must admit, he was creepy. I saw him again a few more times daily. But one day, when I was walking with my friend, making our way through the crowd, that man crossed me. I was about to collide with him and tried to avoid him, but instead he pushed me and grabbed and pinched my chest area so hard that it began to hurt a lot. He was so smooth with his actions that my friend, who was by my side, couldn't tell what happened. She kept asking me what was wrong, but I just walked mindlessly to my auto rickshaw and sat there and told her to go away. She understood and walked away, as she used to live nearby. I was so shaken that when I got home and saw my parents, I burst into tears. Because I am the only child, I was never afraid to tell my parents anything, and I told them everything. My dad was pissed. That's where our revenge started. I have never seen my dad so angry before. He drafted a plan to trap the sleazeball with his friends. We will name them Uncle 1 and Uncle 2. My dad was friends with our school principal. He visited him when I was attending my school the next day as if nothing had happened, as they told me not to tell anyone. Our principal was great and assured us that even though it happened outside the school, they would fully cooperate to trap the sleazeball. At lunch, they called me into the principal's office and told me that Uncle 1 and Uncle 2 would be scattered in the crowd with my English teacher. The school gatekeeper will be near me, and my dad will be near the shop where I usually spot the man. They instructed me to walk normally with my friend and avoid them as if they were strangers, but to alert the nearest person as soon as I spotted the sleazeball. My dad and others were there the whole day, and at 5 p.m., it was time to execute the plan. As I was instructed, I was walking casually with my friend. She asked me several times because she knew something was odd, but I told her to shush and enjoy the show. And then, I spotted the sleazeball actually harassing my other classmate. I quickly alerted Uncle 1. Initially, it was planned not to hit him and just call the police, but he was caught in the act. So Uncle 1 dragged him away and started beating him. Soon, my dad, Uncle 2, and the gatekeeper joined him. Then, my English teacher handled the situation and dragged the sleazeball inside the school gates and into the principal's office. My classmates surrounded me with questions, and I gladly answered them and stayed outside the gates with them. After a few minutes, I was called into the principal's office where I saw the sleazeball. I thought they might ask me some questions, but the principal gave me some apple juice and told me to relax. Sleazeball was there crying, begging to be let go as he would never do it again. He was badly bruised and his clothes were torn. After a few minutes, the police came and took the sleazeball. He was giving me such a deadly look that it still gives me the chills. My father and everyone else in the room were so happy and smiling, as if there was a celebration, and they told me they were so proud of me as I had saved multiple girls that day. I still don't know the details, but the school took full responsibility for our safety, put that man into jail, and CCTVs were installed within a week, even in a parking lot to cover the area outside the school. I've gotta say, I'm really glad the story turned out the way it did. I could be wrong, but I feel like most schools would say, hey, if it happened off school property, even if it was just outside it, it's not our problem, even though it definitely should be. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and I'll see you next time.